Welcome back to the Death Channel. There's nothing like a bit of mass hysteria to get people thinking about life and death, especially when it involves some unstoppable celestial force wiping out all life on Earth. That's exactly what a lot of people thought was going to happen back in 1910, when everyone went comet mad. Just imagine the madness of preparing for a comet apocalypse during the Belle Epoque. A rather thrilling notion, I would say. This was the age of Gibson girls, the Wright brothers' flyer and the light bulb. People's minds were already occupied by flying objects and bright lights, so the impending arrival of a comet was enough to send everyone into a frenzy. Looking up at the skies, seeing the great ball of fire and ice cruising towards you, that would get the blood pumping. And, as depicted by the many 19th and 20th century postcards showing people tumbling through the skies, people really were concerned they were headed towards the celestial demise. Among all the great comet scares, the 1910 appearance of Halley's Comet truly stands out as the one which sent people a bit mad. This was also the first time a photograph was ever taken of a comet, and scientists managed to amass a collection of valuable spectroscopic data. But as usual, hardly anyone was bothered about the science. The main events were the apocalyptic imaginings, religious freakouts, and of course, the commercial possibilities. The sheer excitement surrounding its arrival flamed a media uproar. This prompted stores to hawk anti-comet pills and newspapers to advertise rentals for comet-escaped submarines. There was even a cult that contemplated offering a virgin sacrifice. How did things escalate to such extremes? Quite easily, as it turns out. The cosmos, with its mysterious celestial bodies, often baffles those of us without a proper scientific background. But Halley's Comet has always been more than just your everyday cosmic passerby. Even the layperson has long been fascinated by its strange and threatening presence. By 1705, the comet's orbital cycle, occurring approximately every 75 years, was established by the British astronomer Edmund Halley. This discovery not only gave the comet its name, but also started a new tradition: the chance to witness its 24 million mile-long tail with the naked eye, perhaps once or twice in one's lifetime. Halley's discovery might never have occurred had he not sought out the wisdom of the great Isaac Newton. Halley and Newton were friends and fellows of the Royal Society, and Halley had been editor of Newton's masterwork, Principia Mathematica. After much observation, Halley used Newton's mathematical laws to figure out what effect the gravitational pull of Saturn and Jupiter would have on a comet. Then he went back in history to previous sightings of comets and figured out that they were not new comets each time, but in fact the same one returning about every 76 years, although we now know this varies between 72 and 80 years. Anyway, back down on the ground, regular people began to wonder, what if there were repercussions from such intimate encounters with comets? Could it disrupt some part of our own delicate celestial equilibrium? And what if it crashed into us? By the mid-19th century, these questions were burning in the imaginations of many, but they would have to wait a while to find their answers, as Halley's Comet was due to appear again. At the dawn of the 20th century, the world had dramatically transformed since its previous outing. Advances in media and technology quickened the flow of information and ideas, and massive innovations were unfolding in the automobile and radio sectors. The era had already introduced the world to aeroplanes, and the earliest photographs of celestial bodies had been snapped. This offered a prime opportunity to finally capture an image of the comet as it approached Earth. This prospect had one individual particularly on edge: the French scientist Camille Flammarion. Flammarion was an influential figure in the field of astronomy. He managed the journal L'Astronomie and owned a private observatory in Juvisy-sur-Orge, France. This rather magnificent place resembled a castle and is now known as the Flammarion Observatory. The observatory is a brief trip from Paris if you ever find yourself in the City of Lights and feel inspired to learn more about the big lights in the sky. Flammarion's distinctive observatory truly was a remarkable sight. Not only did it feature an observation tower, but it also housed an extensive library, a quite lovely garden, and a grotto where he put on avant-garde art shows and performances. It was his writing that really caught the popular imagination. He published both scientific essays and science fiction with a flair for bombastic and sensational prose. In his 1888 work, L'Atmosphère, Météorologie populaire, he declared, "This end of the world will occur without noise, without revolution, without cataclysm," describing a future where, just as a tree loses leaves in the autumn wind, so the earth will see in succession the falling and perishing of all its children. And in this eternal winter, which will envelop it from then on, she can no longer hope for either a new sun or a new spring. She will purge herself of the history of the worlds. Rather grim indeed, but people were lapping it up. He claimed that Halley's comet carried deadly cyanogen gas that, quote, would impregnate the atmosphere and possibly snuff out all life on the planet. This alarming statement was picked up by the New York Times and magnified by tabloid newspapers worldwide. Soon enough, people were frantically blocking up the keyholes in their homes in the hope of keeping the noxious space gas out. There was talk that the cyanogen from the comet tail would form into enormous so-called radiant hurricanes that would sweep across the Earth. In Oklahoma, a sect known as the Sacred Followers decided to step things up another level. Just like the old days, they figured that a virgin sacrifice was the only way to avoid total destruction. Before anyone was strapped to the altar, the police intervened and put an end to any further comet sacrificing activities. But there were other less risky products flooding the market for those who feared the coming comet. You could purchase anti-comet pills, buy comet-proof shelters. There were soaps that could scrub the comet dust from your skin, and even a booming submarine rentals so you could sit the whole thing out safely beneath the waves. One product that sold very well was a special umbrella that would keep you nice and dry, while cyanogen gas rained from the heavens all around. Some went for an old favourite and purchased the anti-comet masks, while others decided to simply cool their nerves with a few snifters of comet whiskey. It was an odd period and one of both real dread and a peculiar collective thrill at the prospect of an apocalyptic finale to our species. Fashion also embraced the comet craze, with comet-themed buttons, brooches and jewellery for sale from a range of sources from handmade street hawker wares to the finest couture items. The phenomenon of Halley's comet seemed to transcend its actual celestial importance. No previous comet visit had kicked off this kind of frenzy. In 1910, when another comet appeared, the New York Times noted, "The comet some clear-sighted folks say they have seen near the western horizon of late is not Halley's comet, but an unidentified buttering from space, now called for convenience, A 1910, which is as good a name as any for a comet without a history. Quite the slight, but any other comet showing up in 1910 had better expect to be treated like riff-raff compared to the huge celebrity that was Halley's." Then came the big moment. On May 19th, 1910, Earth traversed the tail of Halley's comet, closing in at a mere 0.15 astronomical units. This event was exceptional, even considering the comet's long history of possibly 200,000 years circling the Sun. The previous nearest encounter was recorded in the year 837 at a distance of 0.04 astronomical units. Unlike that visit, the 1910 passage was captured on film. The fears of widespread calamities and bizarre fatalities, as sensationalized by the press, turned out to be unfounded. Many of you will probably recall a similar sense of mild relief and maybe slight disappointment taking hold at 1 minute past midnight in the year 2000. Still, some people believed the comet really did have some tangible effects. "I came in with Halley's comet in 1835, Mark Twain declared in 1909, predicting to go out with it in 1910, which he indeed did. In fact, he died one day after the comet reached its perihelion on the 20th of April. Whether Twain's timing was due to willpower, chance, or random coincidence remains to be seen. But his passing was one of several curious events that seemed to be linked to the comet. These stirred up the theories of its influential force all over again. Some even believed that its arrival killed off King Edward VII and suggested it played a role in triggering the Xinhai Revolution in China in 1911, which ultimately led to the fall of the last imperial dynasty. In England, now with a new monarch on the throne in the form of George V, sudden fears of a German invasion began to rise. While this wouldn't come to pass until the attempt in 1940, they were just around the corner from a devastating war with the Germans. Meanwhile, Paris experienced severe flooding from the River Seine, another calamity attributed to Halley. Indeed, the theatrics surrounding Halley's comet are not a modern phenomenon. This celestial wanderer has been causing a stir throughout history. As I mentioned, it is believed that Halley has been orbiting in its current path for as long as 200,000 years. Historical records, like those from Chinese astronomers in 240 BC, show that this comet has long puzzled onlookers, and many historical events have been attributed to its arrival. Even the Bayeux Tapestry features an appearance from Halley. Halley's comet was a harbinger of doom to the Normans and other northern and western European people of the era. It appears in panel 8 of the tapestry, burning brightly in the sky as King Harold is crowned. Several onlookers point to the skies as it passes. However, they are missing the ominous Norse ships lurking in the bottom corner. Ships that would carry Harold's conqueror and his doom on the battlefield. And it was all perhaps down to the auspicious presence of Halley in the sky in 1066, as William, King of the Normans, took its arrival as a sign that he must proceed with the invasion of England. Other events that coincided with its appearance include the death of Julius Caesar, Attila the Hun's invasion of Gaul, and the fall of Jerusalem. Speaking of the Holy Land, Halley has also been proposed as a historical model for the Star of Bethlehem, notably in a 14th century painting. When King Louis I of France observed the comet in the 9th century, he took it as a divine admonition to construct more churches. In the 15th century, humanist scholar Bartolomeo Platina reacted to the comet with dread, writing that the, quote, hairy and fiery star signaled the imminent arrival of grievous pestilence, dearth, and some great calamity. The hysteria of 1910 was, then, merely the climax of centuries of fascination and fear. What distinguished this episode was the context of social and technological advancements in which it occurred. It wasn't just a shared scare or myth, but a phenomenon that was extensively commercialized, marketed, and captured in photographs. This pattern persisted during Halley's last visit in the 1980s, though without the same degree of doomsday panic. By that time, unlike the people of 1910, 20th century people had witnessed their own capacity to wreak destruction on humanity, far greater than the threat of any comet. One can only speculate about the conditions that will greet Halley's comet upon its next return. So, with that in mind, mark your calendars for July 28th, 2061. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoy videos about death, please like and subscribe. See you on the other side.